A new series called 10 Paths to God, and these are 10 conversations that God willing we'll have together over the next coming weeks to try to develop a deeper connection to God. Tonight's conversation is about prayer. Now, I have to admit that this particular subject, prayer, is not an easy one for me. Now, some people have a natural ability to pray, they have a natural ability to connect. Praying does not come natural to me at all. I don't like having to ask anyone for anything. I was taught at a very young age to be very independent. There's a concept in the Gemara that says, "Soneh matnot yichyeh," one who hates gifts will survive. I love that idea. The idea that you just don't rely on anyone and be as independent as you can be, and that makes you strong. And the idea of having to sit and ask for something from someone, somewhere else, an invisible being in a different realm is even more difficult for me. But like anything in life that is meaningful, it requires a tremendous amount of focus and effort on our parts. Okay? Now, having said that, what is prayer? Like, what are we doing? What do we want? The word tefillah comes from the word pilel, which means to introspect. Prayer is not just something, it's a mistake to think it's just a bakasha, an asking for, just give me, give me, give me. We all too often relate to God like a genie. You rub the lamp 3 times, it pops out, and you have 3 wishes, and ask what you want, wish away. And that certainly is not what tefillah is about. But what is tefillah? Tefillah has different layers to it. On the one hand, it's language based, right? It's about me learning how to ask, to speak, to communicate. It's about communicating with something beyond my ability to completely understand. It's about building a relationship with an infinite being. Tefillah is knowing that you're not alone. Tefillah is about being okay with being vulnerable. Tefillah is about not having all the answers and not always getting all the answers to the things that you want. Tefillah is knowing that life has purpose and meaning, and that in a world that all too often feels like it's on this automatic copy, paste, repeat path, right, that seems meaningless, prayer reminds us that there's actually meaning to it, that I play a significant role to everything that's happening on a planet. It's not just that your DNA and everything around you is just moving, and that molecules are just bumping into one another, but know that everything around us has meaning and purpose. Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am." Jews say, "I pray, therefore I am not alone." Jews have been in an exiled state for a long time, for 2,000 years. And it's hard to relate to what that loneliness means, but we were oppressed as a people for so long. And we have no memory of it. We talk about it, Bezrat Hashem on Pesach, what oppression was like, being slaves. But we don't really understand what real oppression is. But imagine living in a world where your rights would be diminished by the very fact of who your parents were and where you were born. Right? Having no one to turn to. Nothing. Prayer was a very deep part of Jewish identity. There's no deeper, more beautiful prayer than the prayer of Sarah, or the prayer of the Ima'ot Rivka, Rachel, Leah. The prayers of the Ima'ot were so powerful. The prayers of Hannah, such powerful people expressing this deepest desire of hope, of wanting more from their reality, and never giving in or giving up to their circumstances. And I know it's so easy to give in and give up. I remember having those feelings and those thoughts. It's hard to push, because when you push for so long, you end up feeling so empty inside. You just feel like you're dry bones. It's just, I'm dead. I'm tired. I'm hadged. It's enough. I just can't. It's too much. It's not fair. And all those words and those feelings, it's a mistake. It's a mistake that we make. Because prayer, if it's done right, is a meditation that allows you to refocus on the more important things in life. Prayer is setting aside a time throughout your day to pull yourself out of the hamster wheel that you find yourself on there's no meaning in that hamster wheel. If that's how you're relating to your world, that's sad. If it's only about, I got to do today as I did the day before, you're leading yourself to an endless depression. And that what prayer is supposed to do, prayer is supposed to help you disconnect from what was and give you the ability of dreaming about a better, greater tomorrow. That's what tefillah is at its core. But it's not something that you and I naturally relate to because we've bought into this idea that, I'm independent. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvaro. So what I want to do tonight is I want to go through a very brief understanding of what I think tefillah is. All these ideas are not my own. They're all based on Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. I don't know a more eloquent person to express tefillah than Rabbi Sacks. The idea of being open and being humble is at the core of what tefillah demands. Because if there's no humility, if there's no room for you to create space for something else, something greater than you, if there's no room for you to create space for an infinite being that loves you more than you could possibly imagine. It's hard to understand that, but if you believe that there is a God, and you believe that He created the universe just so that He can give to you, and that means at His core, His essence, His being, is He's a giver. Love is defined as the desire to give unconditionally. No one loves you more than God does. And therefore, as much as you feel disconnected, alone, betrayed maybe, the circumstances are challenging, difficult, and you desperately want whatever it is that you're yearning for. More than you are yearning for what you want, God desperately wants to give it to you. And the fact that He has not is an expression of an infinite being's desire to give you only the best. And very possibly that whatever it is that you're yearning for right now is not the right time. I often speak. I had a rabbi that I was very close to. His name is Rabbi Yisrael Hirsch. He's one of the very few savants I've ever met. Super genius. Guy knows he could do the pin test, which is taking a pin and putting it into any page of Talmud, and whatever letter that pin hits from front to back, he could tell you every single letter on the front, back for like the whole entire Masechta, like the whole folio of he's that level of genius. Okay, he finished all of Shas when he was 16 years old, and has finished it every year since. Okay, very, very bright fellow. I was married when I was 24 years old, and when I got married, I moved to Israel. I came back, and I became a member of his synagogue, and he was still single, and he was significantly older than me. And I was fortunate enough to develop a very deep connection with him, and I used to call him and chat with him all the time. And at one point, I actually had the gall to say, "Hey, Rabbi, doesn't it bother you that you're not married?" He's like, "What do you mean?" He said to me, he's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, you do all these things, like you pray, you eat kosher, you keep Shabbat, you finish, you're learning, you're helping all these people. Don't you feel like it's just not fair? Like you're doing everything right, and you're not getting the things that you think you deserve, that you should have. Like you want to be married already." He's like, "I never think about that at all." So that's when I realized that, I have a very juvenile understanding of tefillah. And he said to me, he's like, "I don't think about it at all." He's like, I know that if I'm not married, it's because God doesn't want me to be married. He had that level of emunah and bitachon, that level of faith and trust. I don't have that kind of faith and trust, but he did. And he was very picky and particular about the kind of girl he wanted to marry. And I thought he was being overly critical, and he wasn't open enough to other kinds of girls. And lo and behold, he found everything that he was looking for at the right time with the right person. He's married now, he's got children, and so on and so forth. But he never flinched. And we spend so much time being angry or emotional about where we're at. And that creates a blockage for ourselves. Tefillah is supposed to be the hack to that. But it's hard to create a space and time where you're that vulnerable to your reality and you're willing to accept your circumstances. Tefillah is supposed to be the introspection necessary to accept where you are, to have the courage to move forward, and the hope that everything will work out in the end like it's supposed to. That's what tefillah is at its core. There's no other people on planet Earth that have been more hopeful than our people. If you're sitting in this room, it's because you come from people that were super hopeful, that had a tremendous amount of faith in the future. For better and for worse, you're the heir to that hope. You're here because there are people that didn't give up. You're here because people who went through so much hardship, who had so much pain, pushed through that pain and did not give up. That's what I believe tefillah is at its core. It's not a secret. I speak about it all the time. Jews are getting smaller in number. In America, the assimilation rate is closer to 72%. In 30 years from now, Jewish people will be half the size in this country. We're going to go from 5 million Jews to 2.5 million Jews. And I do believe there's a deep correlation between the Jews that stay in the fold and the Jews that leave. The ones that stay in have one thing in common. It's called tefillah. It's called prayer. They haven't given up. They haven't become cynical. They're not jaded. They work on being hopeful. They work on their maintaining their emotional state, not allowing themselves to be like a horse running into battle, not thinking. But a soldier who is very, very, very focused and clear, who has a plan on how he's going to get out of the situation that he's in. That's what it means to be Jewish. And tefillah is at the core of it. You want a relationship with God. Last week we spoke about clarifying your identity. What does it mean to truly be you? And today we're going to kind of double click on this idea of tefillah. So this is this introduction to tefillah, the prayer, the understanding prayer, Jewish prayer by Rabbi Sacks and his Koran Siddur. They actually have a Sephardic version of it. So if you actually like some of the things that you read here tonight, I recommend getting the Koran, Jonathan Sacks edition, Edot Mizrach. They have one already. It's the English translation is the best translation of the Siddur I've seen. And the commentary is all his. And if you're looking to find something that helps you focus on, meditate on the right kavanot, I think he did a really good job at putting something that is really meaningful for our generation. And this is what he says. Okay, we're at number 1. He says, the metaphor that to me captures the spirit of prayer more than any other is Yaakov's dream, in which alone at night, fleeing danger and far from home, he saw a ladder stretching from the earth to the heaven, with angels ascending and descending. Prayer is a ladder, and we are the angels. If there is one theme sounded throughout the prayers, it's the creation, revelation, redemption, or ascent, summit, and descent, creation. This is the ideas, and this is how he breaks it down. Okay, he has it in Pesukei de Zimra, right? This is the idea of revelation, right? Shema, redemption, and so on and so forth. We'll see on the other page. So he says like this: in the verses of praise, Pesukei de Zimra are the prayers that we say from Hodu all the way up to Shema. Okay, that's all Pesukei de Zimra in a nutshell. Okay, he says we climb from earth to heaven by meditating on creation, like a Turner or Monet landscape. Those are famous artists. The psalmist let us see the universe bathed in light. But this light is not the light of beauty, but of holiness. The light of the sages, say God, made from the first day, that hid from the righteous in the life to come. Throughout some of the most magnificent poetry ever written, we see the world as God's masterpiece, suffused with his radiance. Therefore, what is tefillah? Tefillah is an opportunity to stop and reflect on the grandeur of the universe that we're in. And therefore, Pesukei de Zimra, the first part of prayer, is just me humbling myself. I am grateful for the things that I have. I am grateful for my parents. I'm grateful for my job. I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for my eyesight. All the brachot of the morning, I'm grateful for being able to stand up, to be able to discern between light and darkness, between good and bad. I'm free from bondage and so on and so forth. All those things, and we'll see later, the Asher Yatzar, all these things about me humbling myself so I could just feel a sense of gratitude. You think you're naturally going to be a humble person or feel gratitude? Spoiler alert, you won't feel gratitude unless you work on gratitude. It doesn't work. Hakarat Tov is an avodah. Tefillah is avodah. It's work. You want a connection? You want to feel it? Are you working for that connection? Revelation, by the time we reach Baruch Hu and the blessing Shema, we have neared the summit. Now we are in heaven with the angels. We have reached revelation. The divine presence is close, almost tangible. Now comes a great declaration of faith at the heart of prayer, the Shema, with its passionate profession of the unity of God and the highest of all expressions of love, with all your heart, b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol me'odecha, with all your might. Then comes the Amidah, the supreme height of prayer. Three traditions fuse at this point. The silent Amidah, said by individuals, reminding us of prophetic prayer. The leader's repetition, representing priestly worship and prayer, sacrifice. And then the Kedusha, the prayer is a mystical experience. So we start off with this humbling experience, and then this place of ecstasy, getting closer to God, and getting ourselves to a place where we would actually feel God. And the way I do this is as follows. This is just like a little bit like a tidbit. All meditation requires you to take control of your body, because your body often runs in an automatic state, automatic responses all the time. The reason why meditation starts with breathing is because you're taking control away from the body. You're allowing the mind to direct your breathing. The same is true with tefillah. I'm allowing my mind to direct my feeling of gratitude, my feelings of vulnerability, my feelings of just feeling this deeper connection to something bigger and more than myself. Okay, the what's it called? The Amidah. That point where I take those 3 steps back. I'm not just taking 3 steps back. For most of us, we do the 3-step shuffle. We go back, we go forth, and we're just doing this the whole time, and then that's it. There's nothing happening in your heart. The whole idea of taking 3 steps back is supposed to be meditative, just like you're taking your breath. You're not just standing still. You're taking 3 steps back because you're about to enter a new dimension. You're about to enter into a new reality. When you take those 3 steps back, you're moving yourself out of the world that you're in. And when you take those 3 steps forward, you are in a new plane of existence where you are standing alone before the Almighty. That's the meditation. You're alone. And the words you say are Hashem, sifatai tiftach ofi yagiti atecha. Hashem, please open my lips. Because you recognize that the fact that you're animated, the fact that your body can move, is an expression of God's will. Another humbling act. And if you want to take it even a step further, before you even say those words, take another moment, pause for a second. And think of the following scenario. Close your eyes before you take those 3 steps forward. And imagine yourself standing alone in a world with God. No one else is there. It's just you and Him. And you have an opportunity to communicate with this infinite being. What would you say? What are you going to ask for? If you had this alone time with a being that is infinite, infinitely in love with you, what would you ask for? Now, how many of you can relate to getting a phone call from someone who you don't really know very well, but they're calling you to ask for something, and it's annoying? Because why are you asking me that? I don't really know you. I barely know you. It's one thing if like a family or a close friend. Everyone knows what I'm talking about, right? So I often think about that when I'm praying. Am I going to be the annoying person that calls out to God whenever I'm in trouble? Or am I the guy that has that relationship set, and that when I'm in trouble, I could go to that person because he's the right person to go to? There's a difference. Which voice are you most likely going to respond to? The guy who just shows up because there's trouble and he needs your help? Of course you help, but it's not the same. You don't do it the same energy, the same drive. It's different. Tefillah is an avodah of building a relationship with the Almighty. Redemption, concluding prayers. He says as follows. He says, from here, prayer begins its descent. First comes the tachnun, in which we speak about privately intimately to the king, which is basically a declaration of all the things we've done wrong. At this point, with a mixture of anguish and plea, we speak not of God's love for Israel, but of Israel's defiant love for God, of God. Then comes Ashrei and the subsequent passages similar to the Pesukei de Zimra, but this time with redemption, not creation, as their theme. The key verse is, a Redeemer will come to Zion. The section closes with a prayer that we may become agents of redemption as we re-engage with the world. That means you and I can bring redemption to the world. We are now back on earth. The service completes except for Aleinu Kaddish and the Shir Shel Yom. We are ready to re-enter life and its challenges. We are not the same after we have stood in the divine presence as we were before. We have been transformed, hopefully. We see the world in a different light. Perhaps we radiate a different light. We have spoken to and listened to God. We have aligned ourselves with the moral energies of the universe. We have become, in Lurianic terminology, the Arizal, vessels for God's blessings. We are changed by prayer. That's supposed to happen every day. 3 times a day. What would your lives be like if you could integrate this idea that tefillah itself is supposed to move you spiritually, move you emotionally, move you psychologically, allow you to grow in something more every single day? Shimon HaTzadik would say as follows. This is in the Pirkei Avot. He says that ha'olam omed al shlosh devarim, right? The world stands on 3 things: al Torah, al avodah, al gemilut chasadim. Right? So Torah, we know, is the book of, I'm so sorry, my voice is like dying. I don't know, I feel like I'm choking up because I'm really emotional about this topic. I don't know why. And like I'm losing my voice. I can't speak properly. Torah and avodah. Okay, avodah is an expression of tefillah. Why is avodah tefillah? We know that in the temple, we had something called the service. The service's function was there to be the bridge between man and God. And it was very simple. I did a sin. I brought a nice little lamb. Brought the Kohen there. He made a little shawarma for me. And we roasted it. And we put in the lafa. We made a bracha. We ate. And God forgave me. But it was not that simple. What really happens is that when I'm watching the Kohen roast this animal, do shchita, I'm imagining that blood that's being spilled is my own blood. The idea of avodah is that there is this idea that you and I need to make the prayers real. It's not going to feel real if you're not working on making it feel real. We're so used to allowing emotions to dictate our reality that when the time comes and we're meant to evoke our own emotion, we're numb to it because we never practiced it. I find this being a massive issue for people in dating, in relationships. Really nice guy, Rabbi, but I don't feel it. What do you mean you don't feel it? He's got everything, I just don't feel it. It's not, obviously not for me. I'm like, what does that mean? That's the stupidest thing ever in my life. Don't allow your emotions to dictate your reality. Of course, you have to have those things. Attraction, you have to have common values, core values, you have to have similar goals. But if all that is there, and you're just talking about an emotion that's not there, all you need is the secret ingredient called time. Sometimes we need to push our emotions to become a reality. And a lack of emotion is not an indication of anything positive or negative. It's just not there. But all too often, people will end a relationship because I don't feel the emotions. This is a mistake. If you held all the emotions and it was super palpable and clear, that to me, that's a scary thing for me. Because if all the emotions are there and you feel all that power in the beginning of that relationship, it means you're not thinking. It means you're blinded by love. And that's dangerous. I don't want you to be in a dangerous relationship. I want you to be in a happy, healthy relationship. A happy, healthy relationship is one that you choose. The most meaningful relationships you'll have in life are the ones that you choose. Everything else, sheker. It's lies. That's what avodah is. The avodah is the work, the hard work that you got to put into something to do what is right. Not because it feels good, not because the emotions are there. You just got to do what is right. That's avodah. It's hard. It's the work. Like every day I got to go to work and I got to put my back-breaking work, and it doesn't matter how I feel about it. I just got to do it. It's work. That's what this is. Tefillah is work. You want a connection. You want to feel. You want to be able to ask. You got to work at it. Rabbi Shlomo Ibn Gabirol, this is what he says, but he wrote this poem called Before I Was Born. He says, before I was born, Your love enveloped me. You turned nothing into substance and created me. Who etched out my frame? Who poured me into a vessel and molded me? Who breathed the spirit into me? Who opened the womb of Sheol and extracted me? Who has guided me from youth time until now, taught me knowledge and cared wondrously for me? Truly, I am nothing but clay within your hand. It is you, not I, who have really fashioned me. I confess my sins to you and do not say that a serpent intrigued and tempted me. How can I conceal from you my faults, since before I was born, your love enveloped me? That's the kind of humility Jews had, right? He wrote this about 700 years ago. Okay, this is this idea of constantly working on a theme. Anything that has meaning is repetitive. Anything that allows us to experience greatness is going to be repetitive. All right, you think of a gymnast. Think of a weightlifter, think of an ice skater, think of a basketball player. You're going to do it over and over and over again until you get it right. You know, people often ask me, like, how do you always come up with new content? It's like so hard. And I say it's a mistake. You see, if I was a musician, I could sing the same song over and over again for the next 20 years and get paid a lot of money because I perfected that song. Right? But when it comes to classes, it doesn't work like that. But there should be a space for someone to, because we have too much ADD. I want to hear something new. We should be in a space where you could hear something over and over again from someone, so they're able to refine it and perfect it over and over again. That's what time is supposed to do. Time allows us to repeat so we could perfect things. If you're doing the same thing with no movement, that's a problem. But this idea of just being in this place of just humility, that I am an expression of your will, and I am willing to do whatever it is you want me to do because I want this relationship. I'll do anything to have that relationship. I have a 23-year-old son who got married this past July. And the girl that he dated, they dated for a while, but she was dating for a while before he started dating, and she had a hard time finding a shidduch. And like, I remember that first dinner I had with my consuegros, you know, and like, it was around Pesach time. I guess our anniversary's coming up. And, you know, we had that dinner meeting of the families. You know, who are you? What do you want with my son? Who are you? What do you want with my daughter? Kind of thing. And we just spoke about how blessed we felt at the end of that conversation. Like two people, two families with similar values and goals, and their children are so wonderful, and so on and so forth. And I said to my consuegra, male version, and I said to him, you know, Ra, right? Ro, thank you. Ro, not Ra. Ra's girl, right? Ro. Ro. Okay, fine. So I spoke to him and I said to him, you know, and I believe this. I believe this is so true. If you truly want something in life, you won't get it unless you're willing to cry for it. If you're not willing to open up that deepest part of yourself for what you want, you'll always be stuck. You know, like it's such a powerful idea. Like when you truly want something, no matter what it is, you truly want it, you will not give up, you will be hopeful, and you will create a space for you to cry for it. Sarah Imenu had no children. She didn't have a womb. And she did not give up. She was 90 years old when she got pregnant. Sounds crazy, right? We talk about the idea of manifesting your reality. We talk about the idea of how your brain has a deep impact on your physiology and so on and so forth. I'm not saying that miracles can happen, right? I believe they can, and I'm not saying we should rely on miracles, but I do, until you push yourself to the very end, you haven't asked for anything yet. So let's look at Rav Kook. He says, all beings long for the very source of their origin. Every plant, every grain of sand, every clod of earth, small creatures and great, the heavens and the angels, every substance and its particles, all of them are longing, yearning, panting to attain the state of holy perfection. Human beings suffer constantly from this homesickness of the soul. And it is in their prayer that we cure it. When praying, we feel at one with the whole creation and rise it to the very source of blessing and life. That's what tefillah is supposed to do. It's supposed to get us to that point. I am one with the Almighty. So we say this, we say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu haolam asher yatzar et hadam b'chokhmah. This is the prayer we say when we come out of the bathroom. Anyone here ever have a kidney stone? I gave birth to a stone. Yeah, I remember that day very vividly. It was a Friday night. This is the second year of my marriage. Okay, I have a full table of guests. And I turned to my wife, Nalini, and I said, Nalini, I'm not feeling so good. She's like, what's wrong? I'm like, I don't know. I just think I pulled my back. I disc slipped. I don't know what's going on. Something doesn't feel right. So I go upstairs, and I'm vomiting from the pain. It's disgusting. It's the worst thing you could possibly imagine, okay? I come back down. I'm like, Nalini, I think you need to get me a doctor. I'm really not doing well. She's like, okay, go back upstairs. I go back upstairs. It's an hour later. I come back. I'm like, where's the doctor? She's like, I thought you were just joking around. I'm like, I'm not joking around. I need a doctor now. I'm dying. Get me a doctor. So I went to the hospital, and there was a huge line in the ER in Shaarei Tzedek. And I walk in, and I have my face all contorted from the pain. A nurse passes by, sees me. She's like, Ata, bo iti achshav. Boom, takes me, gives me this horse shot of a tranquilizer. Baruch Hashem. And then that final moment of days of just drinking nonstop tea and lemon, and just like, pick, little stone comes out. This moment of joy. I met a woman in the hospital who had 9 children, and she gave birth to a stone also, like I did. And she said giving birth to a stone was way more painful than giving birth to a child. So now I could say I know what no, I can't say that, but I say that I get in trouble. Anyway, so we say this bracha, sheyatzah, right? This idea that God has this ability of opening and closing the things that are happening in our body. We're so disconnected from what's really happening, and everything is so miraculous. By the way, if you're living in Israel, very important. This is just like a good, pro tip. The water in Israel has tremendous amount of minerals in it. So if you have a diet that's very high in protein and high in minerals, you're going to get kidney stones. So you need to have a diet that's high in citrus, actually, lots of lemon in your diet to break up the stones. So this way you don't get into that trouble. This is like, in Israel, the washing machines don't last for more than 2 years because the pipes get filled with all the calcium. So every 6 months, you got to do a wash with just like lemon juice to clear it out. So I did that, and that was fine. After that, I was good. I'm just saying, just Israel's an interesting place. Just good to know. Hey, whenever I'm on a trip, I'm drinking lemonade. The whole lemonade, I'm like a shah. Lemon, im harbe lemon. All right, fine. So he says as follows. He says, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks says the human body contains 100 trillion cells. Within each cell is a nucleus. Within each nucleus is a double copy of the human genome. Each genome contains 3.1 billion letters of genetic code. Let me read that again because that's so cool. Within each nucleus is a double copy of the human genome. Each genome contains 3.1 billion letters of genetic code. Enough to transcribe to fill a library of 5,000 books. That's in your body. Each cell, in other words, contains a blueprint of the entire body of which it is a part. The cumulative force of these scientific discoveries is nothing short of wondrous in ways undreamt of by our ancestors. But we know to what extent the microcosm is a map of the macrocosm. From a single cell, it may be possible to reconstruct the entire organism. One of my favorite authors, a guy named Ray Kurzweil, who's a famous futurist. He wrote a book called The Singularity is Near. He actually invented the Kurzweil keyboard, electric keyboard. He invented it when he was 17 years old. Super genius. He said recently, like last week, that in 7 years we will have the technological ability to choose how old you want to be when you die. Now he has a 98% accuracy rate in his predictions over the last 35 years. He predicted, when the personal computer to come out, processing the exponential growth of the processor and other things. This guy's a very, very smart guy. He's working for Google X, and he has some mad scientist vibes going. But he's a Jewish guy, and he was very much motivated by the death of his father to figure a way of curing death. He was so in love with his dad, and he was so broken by the loss of his dad, that he committed his whole life to searching a way to end death, which I think is a beautiful idea, and it's twisted a little bit, but it's beautiful at the same time, because we talk about the idea of mechayei hametim. We make a blessing every single day that God, you will resurrect the dead. This is something that we pray for. We pray for a time where we get rid of death. That is not the natural state that you and I are supposed to be in. Sickness is not a natural expression of our reality. It's a consequence of our society, but that's not the world that God created for us. Rav Kook says in number 7, we forget that we have a holy body no less than a holy spirit. Is your body a highly efficient scientific machine or a miracle from God? The way you relate to it will determine what your tefillah is like. Can it be both? Does your human body help you believe in God? It helps me believe in God. When I think of the fact that in order to create one protein in my body, from an evolutionary perspective, 25,000 base pairs of letters need to line up perfectly for me to create one protein in my body. 25, that's crazy. That's insane. I don't believe that the universe that we're in is an accident. There's something that is guiding it. There's something that is there behind the scenes, pulling everything together. This, my friends, is not an accident. You're too beautiful and perfect to be an accident. Talmud Bavli, may it be your will, O our Lord, O God, our God, to cause to dwell in our lot love. We're asking God to love, fellowship, peace, and friendship, to widen our boundaries through students, to prosper our goal with hope and with future, to point us a share in the Garden of Eden, to direct us in your world through the good companions and good impulses, that we may rise in the morning and find our heart awake to fear your name. This is a request. Why are we asking God for this? Right? Do we have to ask God that we should love? Do we have to ask God for help with friendship and peace? Doesn't that just happen naturally? And the answer is no. It doesn't happen naturally. Actually, bringing two people together is the most unnatural thing in the world. In order for two people to come together, they have to lower their own understanding of themselves, they have to lower their egos, and create a space for the other person. You can't build a friendship with somebody else if you're not willing to humble yourselves in different parts of your reality. It doesn't work. I have a 6-year-old daughter, okay? She's very smart and very cute, but we're just different wavelengths, right? We're different wavelengths. And as much as I'd like to speak to her about like Rabbi Sacks and like, some of my philosophical ideas, she's like, what? But I speak to her about it anyway. She doesn't fully understand it. She's getting there. I could play with her Connect 4. She's getting really good at it. It's not the same game though. I'm teaching her chess. It's not the same. But if I am not willing to create space in my day to humble myself, she's my daughter. I have to create time for her. I want to spend time. I love her so much. I want her to have everything in the world. I want her to have the best everything. I create a space in my day, daily, to speak to her, and I work really hard at spending time with her. Whether I'm reading her stories, or I'm playing her games, or I'll dress up dolls sometimes. It's very painful for me. But I'll do it because I want that relationship so badly. Right? Hopefully your daughter marries someone that's better than you. But she'll never know what better than you is like until you let them in. It's all about time. It's built in the same way that I want to build that relationship with my daughter. I'm telling you, I can tell you, you don't believe me, but I'm telling you, I trust me when I say that I believe God wants it more than I want it with my daughter. He wants to let you in. Stop thinking about the time, the area of your lives right now as an expression of God's punishment or banishment. This is nonsense. You have to work for the things that you want in life. Lord and King of peace, who makes peace and creates all things. I love this. This is just beautiful. Help all of us that we may always hold fast to the attribute of peace, so that true and abundant peace prevail between man and man, between husband and wife, and no strife separate humankind, even in thought. What a beautiful tefillah. Extend abundant peace to us and the whole world, so that all discord be resolved in great love and peace, and with one mind, one heart, all come near to you and your law and truth, and all form one union to you to do your will with a whole heart. Lord of peace, bless us with peace. How many of you have written your own tefillah, your own bakasha, your own request that you're working on refining and like just you're doing it every single day. This is my tefillah. Forget about what you read in the Siddur for a second. That's too hard for you. Great. Rabbi, why do I got to read what someone else wrote 2,400 years ago? They're not my words. So, okay, great. I got that. It's hard. It's too poetic for you. Then write your own tefillah. Make your own thing. Take copy and paste the things you like. Make your own. Don't create excuses not to do something. Figure out a way of building the relationship. You'll never know. Right? You miss 100% of all the shots you don't take. Same thing with tefillah. You miss 100% of the opportunities of connecting with God until you spend time working on tefillah itself. Okay, we're almost there. Okay, prayer, sacrifice, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. Okay, these three pieces over here are a bit long, but they're profound. Okay, so just follow along with me. We're at number 11 right now. The connection between prayer and sacrifice is deep. As we have seen, sacrifice is not the only forerunner of our prayers. Many prayers were spoken by figures in the Bible. These were said without any accompanying offering. Yet the sacrificial system is a major tributary of the Jewish river of prayer. After the destruction of the second Beit HaMikdash, prayer became a substitute for sacrifice. It is avodah shebalev, the sacrificial service of the heart. Yet it is just this feature of prayers that many find difficult to understand or find uplifting. What then was sacrifice? The Hebrew word for sacrifice is korban, which comes from the root meaning to come or to bring close, like karev or karov. The essential problem to which sacrifice is an answer is, how can we come close to God? This is a profound question, perhaps the question of religious life, not simply because of the utter disparity between God's infinity and finitude, but also because the very circumstances of life tend to focus our gaze downward to our needs rather than our upward to our source. The Hebrew word for the universe is olam. It's connected to the verb meaning to hide, ne'elam. The physical world is a place in which the presence of God is real yet hidden. Our horizon of consciousness is foreshortened. We focus on our own devices and desires. We walk in God's light, but often our mind is on other things. How then do we come close to God? By an act of thank you. By an act of renunciation, by giving something away, specifically by giving something back. The sacrifice of the biblical ages were ways in which the individual or the nation as a whole, in effect, said, what we have, God, is really yours. The world exists because of you. We exist because of you. Nothing we have is ultimately ours. The fundamental gesture of sacrifice is, on the face of it, absurd. What we give to God is something that already belongs to Him. As King David said, who am I and who are my people that we should be able to give as generously as this? Everything comes from you, and we have given you only what comes from your hand. Yet, to give back to God is one of the most profound instincts of the soul. Doing so, we acknowledge our dependency. We cast off the, I don't know what that word is. Okay, fine. The carapace of self-absorption. That is why, in one of its most striking phrases, the Torah speaks of sacrifice as being a reach nichoach, sweet savor to God, right? And this is what, I love this idea, that this concept that, like, well, what are we asking for? Who are we asking? We're asking an infinite being for what we want, and He's an infinite being that desperately wants to give me everything, and if I don't have it, then isn't that expression of His will? So who am I to ask? If God knows what you need, and you believe He's going to give you everything that you need, and if you don't have something, why are you asking for it? Maybe you shouldn't have it. Or maybe you're not ready for it right now. But either way, I encourage you to ask. The asking is meant to be a reflective place where you say to yourself, well, am I really worthy of this right now? If I'm not getting what I want, maybe there's some kind of inner change or inner work that I need to go through. If I do the same thing over and over again, I expect different results. We know what you're called. Kavanah, directing the mind. Prayer is more than saying certain words in the right order. It needs concentration, attention, engagement of the mind and the heart, and the left and the right hemispheres of the brain. Without devotion, Rabbi Bachya ibn Pakuda, prayer is like a body without a soul. The key Hebrew word here is kavanah, meaning mindfulness, intention, focus, the direction of the mind. In the context of prayer, it means several different things. The most basic level is kavanah l'shem mitzvah, which means having the intention to fulfill a mitzvah. This means that we do not act for social or aesthetic reasons. We pray because we are commanded to pray. Generally in Judaism, there is a long-standing debate about whether the commandment requires kavanah, but certainly prayer does. because it is supremely an act of the mind. At a second level, kavanah means understanding the words perush hamilim. At least the most important section of prayer requires kavanah in this sense. Without it, the words we say would be merely sound. Understanding the words is, of course, made much easier by the existence of translations and commentaries. The third level relates to context. How do I understand my situation when I pray? The Rambam states in his principles as follows. The mind should be freed from all extraneous thoughts. And the one who prays should realize that he is standing before the divine presence. These are essential elements of at least emidah, the prayer par excellence in which we are conscious of standing before God. That is why we take 3 steps forward at the beginning and 3 back at the end, as if we were entering and leaving a sacred place. The fourth level of kavanah is not merely saying the words, but meaning them, affirming them. Thus, for example, while saying the first paragraph of the Shema, we accept the yoke of the kingdom of heaven, declaring our allegiance to God as our supreme authority in our lives. In the second paragraph, we accept the yoke of the commandments. The word amen means roughly, I affirm what has been said, or right on. In prayer, we put ourselves into the words. We make a commitment, we declare our faith, our trust, our dependency, we mean what we say. And if you're having a tefillah where it's just word service, lip service, you're not connecting. That's totally understandable. How do you work on kavanah? Okay, because if you're going to do the same thing over and over again, you're not going to get new results. The way you work on kavanah is pick one part of the tefillah that you own. Pick one part of the service, whether it's writing your own tefillah, whether it's a particular tefillah in the tefillah that you're reading. Own it. Understand every single word, translate it, find the commentaries, take that, understand it. And whenever you get to that part, close your eyes and say it slowly. Forget about what the minyan is doing if you're praying with the minyan. If you're alone, shut everything off your phone. Don't ever read it. Don't ever pray with a phone. It's the worst thing in the world. Find a siddur or print out your sheet and have it. Just breathe, quiet your mind, and enter into that state. You'll see you'll have more kavanah. As a matter of fact, if you work on your kavanah, your intention, you'll see yourselves being able to pray faster with more kavanah. Not less kavanah, but like all things, anything great requires, again, that effort. So, okay, is prayer answered? Last piece over here, and then we'll wrap up. Is prayer answered? If God is changeless, how can we change him by what we say? This is what I said earlier. Even discounting this, why do we need to articulate our requests? Surely God, who sees the heart, knows our wishes even before we do, without our having to put them into words. What we wish to happen is either right or wrong in the eyes of God. If it is right, God will bring it about, even if we do not pray. And if it is wrong, God will not bring it about, even if we do. So why pray? The classic Jewish answer is simple but profound. Without a vessel to contain a blessing, there can be no blessing. Without a vessel to contain a blessing, there can be no blessing. If we have no receptacle to catch the rain may fall, but we will have none to drink. If we have no radio receiver, the sound waves will flow, but we will be unable to convert them into sound. God's blessings flow continuously, but unless we make ourselves into a vessel for them, they will flow elsewhere. Prayer is the act of turning ourselves into a vehicle for the divine, speaking from personal experience and from many encounters with people for whom prayer was a lifeline. I know that our prayers are answered, and not always in the way we expected, not always as quickly as we hoped, but prayer is never in vain. Sometimes the answer is no. If granting a request would do us or others harm, God will not grant it. But no is also an answer. And when God decides that something I have prayed for should not come to pass, then I pray for the wisdom to understand why. That too is part of the spiritual growth, to accept graciously that we cannot or should not change. Nor is prayer a substitute for human effort. On the contrary, prayer is one of the most powerful sources of energy for human effort. God gives the strength to achieve what we need to achieve and to do what we are placed on earth to do. Prayer changes the world because it changes us. At its height, it is a profoundly transformative experience. If we have truly prayed, we come in the course of time to know that the world was made and we were made for a purpose, that God, through immeasurably vast, though immeasurably vast, is also intensely close, that were my father and my mother to forsake me, the Lord would take me in, that God is with us in our efforts, and that we do not labor in vain. We know, too, that we are part of the community of faith, and with us are 4,000 years of history and prayers and hopes of those who came before us. However far we feel from God, He is there behind us. And all we have to do is turn to face him. Faith is born and lives in prayers. And faith is the antidote to fear. The Lord is my stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Our society doesn't really create room for us to pray because we're constantly on the run and we're constantly distracted by the world that we're in. And we don't really have quiet time for ourselves. Apple tried doing that, those special features in your phone where you have downtimes, and that doesn't really work because you could disable it and there's no downtime really. Creating a ritual for yourselves where you come to a shachrit, even the girls, or a mincha, find a space that you could go to and just be alone. Turn everything off and just be alone. Do it. I'm telling you, your lives will change tremendously. You'll be happier. You'll be more grateful. You'll have more gratitude. You'll see the world around you become, the colors, the light around you will change. In order for us to be individuals that are able to plow forward and create a better, greater future for tomorrow, the only way that reality becomes reality is we're willing to do the hard work and look within ourselves and become better individuals. Prayer is finding the courage to recognize the shortcomings and then having the humility to ask God for the help. It'll come at the right time. Everything always does. Rosh Chodesh is this Wednesday night, Thursday. This is Chodesh Nisan, is a month of miracles. I often think about Amram. Amram was Moshe's father. And we know from the Midrash that Amram ends up giving a divorce to Yocheved, his wife. And he says to her, what's the point of staying married? The Paro just made a decree that every single Jewish boy should be thrown into the river. Let's just shut it down. We've been here for so long. Exile was so hard. We've been oppressed. We've second-class citizens, slaves, just humiliated, mocked, and now they're killing our children. The Maharal says that a child is like, if you look at the core of a fruit, of an apple, right? The seeds are at the core. Killing a child is killing the core of a human being. There's nothing more painful, God forbid. No one should ever have to see that. But imagine a generation of Jews. It sounds so foreign to us, but this was happening not too long ago and all around the world for us. In Israel, before 1948, in Yerushalayim, there were several years where every Friday, Arabs would want to kill a Jew. So the Jews would go into Shabbat mourning. We're so lucky to be where we are, and we're so ungrateful for it. We're midgets that are standing on the shoulders of giants. We're so small, and we're so ungrateful. You want miracles to happen in the Chodesh Nisan? Miriam says to Amram, your decree is worse than Paro. Because Paro made a decree just against the boys, but you ended up going in and killing the girls too. So what does he do? He says, you're right. He ends up remarrying Yocheved. He does something crazy. He's going to get her pregnant again, and she's going to have a baby, and that baby might be thrown out and killed. But that's not our job. Our cheshbon is to do what we're meant to do here. Don't worry about the outcome. Don't worry about the difficulty. Don't worry about the challenge. Your job is to never surrender and always have hope. I give you a blessing that your neshamot should be awoke. They should wake up. They should awake to the reality that you come from a people that have never gave up hope. They came from situations that were far worse than anything you and I will ever see. We live in a world with ultimate comforts, ultimate opportunities. You'll never starve. All you need to do right now is just double down on hope. Hope gives us the courage to become something more. I dare you to hope. I challenge you to work on your hope and allow that hope to give you the strength and the courage to find the space during the day for you to find the ability to ask, be vulnerable, Ask hard. Don't be afraid to cry. Let God in. You will. I'm telling you, when you learn how to pray like that, I read these words. It's so hard for me because Jonathan Sacks, he wrote this curriculum when he had cancer. He knew he was dying. He knew he was praying. I promise you, he was praying for his well-being. And when he wrote those words, like sometimes God says no, right? How does he say it? He says, no, if no, your granted request would do us other harm, God will, he's like, but no is also an answer. He says, then I pray for the wisdom to understand why. That's so hard. And you think the why will make things better? Not always. But that's not the point. The point is this. Make time for yourselves to become something more. Tefillah is one of those paths that allow you to develop a deep, sincere, powerful, emotional connection to God that I'm confident will not only change your world, but will change our future world and many, many other generations to come. Wishing you all an amazing week. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions right now, I'll take them. Otherwise, have a great night. I'm sorry for going over. Laila tov, everybody.